stand in front of you, though. Hey, guys. Thanks for coming out and weathering the storm that was happening earlier. We got a great night tonight. We got Corey May. Keith couldn't join us, but we're going to talk about his epic hike and fly and raft adventures in Pemberton. We're running a little late, so I want to be very conscious of Corey's time. So we'll keep this short, and we'll just introduce Corey and get going. All right? Good, anyhow. Okay, Corey, take it.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, great. Thanks for coming out. This is a presentation on 2 trips that happened July 1st last year and August 1st last year. These were 2 trips that were pivotal moments in my paragliding career that changed the way I travel in the backcountry. It made my map a lot bigger, if you know what I mean. Having a boat with you is, I would say, one of the biggest game changers in paragliding that I can think of. Beyond any upgrade in your wing or harness or whatnot, having a boat is like indispensable, and especially in BC where there's no roads. There's no subway to take home, there's no bus. It is your bus. It's effortless. So it's kind of a two-part. The first part is a presentation on the trips we did, and the second part is kind of a how we did it, and how you can do it. Because my whole motivation here is to hopefully motivate people to also use a boat, to use a pack raft, because it's a beautiful way to travel in the backcountry, and there's no reason why you shouldn't use it. There's no real barrier. If you're flying a paraglider, you can paddle a boat. These are class 2, 3 rivers. You're already piloting something way more complicated. So we can go slide number 1. I guess that's the stats of what we did. It was too long in every sense, but it was really enjoyable. Beautiful trip. Next slide. This is basically what I explained. Next slide. There's Keith. Keith lives in Washington. He couldn't make it today. I don't think he would want to drive all the way here. But that's him, and that's me. We have very similar boats. One has a spray deck, one doesn't have a spray deck. They're just basically pool toys, more or less. They're very light. They weigh about 3 kilograms. They fold to about a package about this big. Mine's 3.2. Keith's, I think, is 3.45. Maybe even lighter now because he just took the deck off it. So they're quite small. They fit. Mine fits under my butt when I go. The whole thing with paddles is right under my butt when I'm flying. Next. So I'll give a brief history first. I whitewater kayaked for probably 12 years before getting into paragliding. That was my obsession. And then I got into paragliding and I was like, oh man, this is way cooler. And then I forgot about whitewater kayaking for a number of years. But the strangest thing was why I got into paragliding was I wanted to fly my whitewater kayak to a really expensive area to go kayaking, is the Clendenning River, because it costs $500 to get airdropped in there with a helicopter. And I was like, I can't afford this. I'm a starving university student. I want to fly a paraglider. I hear people can do this stuff. So I thought about launching off like a snow slope with a hard shell paraglider. That was my whole incentive.
So how did the finances work out at the end of the day?
This is probably more expensive actually getting a pack raft. Yeah, probably way more expensive. Yeah. But the freedom of this doesn't compare. But yeah, long story short was during the process of getting into paragliding, just for the sake of getting myself with my kayak, I fell in love with paragliding. So why this is really satisfying for me is that I've actually reached a full circle and I'm able to do it all in one go, which is super satisfying. It's almost like linking the whole puzzle in my brain. And next slide. Okay, so sorry, I'm just reading off slides notes I took off from the last presentation, so bear with me here. So I met Keith, super impromptu, really fast. Alex Raymond, you guys might know. He said, hey, this guy I know has a pack raft. And I was like, no way. He flies paragliders? And then they were like, yeah. I was like, oh, cool. So I went and talked to him. I'm like, hey, next week we're going to go here. And he's like, okay. And basically we didn't even know each other. We, like 2 or 3 days met each other. We both had pack rafts under our ass, and we're at the same launch. And we're like, okay, let's go here. And we went there. So it was, we basically met each other throughout the trip. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
How much is a pack raft like a thing like that to buy?
How much does it cost to buy? They could range from like $900, $800 used, maybe even cheaper, to brand new. They're about $1,800, maybe more, $2,000 even if you want to go for really elaborate. But I would say probably delivered to your door, brand new, 1,800 Canadian. But they'll last a lifetime if you take care of them. They're really well made. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions at all, you can ask me throughout the thing. Yeah.
What's an alpaca raft? I'm just wondering. Just made kind of thing. Did you get it from Sam Waddington?
No, I got it from Alpaca. I ordered it from the store. Okay. Yeah. But you can get them from Waddington's as well, and I think it's in Chilliwack now. Yeah. They're great. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the trip. So our first flight was from Pemberton Launch, and we went over top of Mount Sampson, right here. So this is a line that's not often taken in the Pemberton Valley. We were so high that day. We didn't care. We're at almost $4,000. So we took some pretty bold lines, and we just kind of kept the compass bearing and said we're going that way. That's Mount Sheba right here. So, next slide. Okay, sweet. So just an example of, so to get to, right before we landed here, so this is a very popular hiking area. This is Gun Lake right here, or Slim Creek, Mount Sheba, and I forget what's the name of the hiking area. Forget the name. Yes, Warner Pass. This is Warner Pass actually. Down there, there's like Tayax flies in people to this lake here, and they go hiking. This is Warner Pass, goes right through there. So we were super lucky to land there the first day of our flight. And just to give you an idea, like just getting there, we got absolutely our asses handed to us right here. Before it was like plug and play flying, it was so easy, so high. Then we got here, and we think the wind came off the glacier here and was ripping, and we were getting our absolute asses handed to us. We thought we were going to have to land up high somewhere. Keith was 50 meters below me. I'm not kidding you. I was like, this is super easy. I'm just going to ridge soar. And he spent an hour and a half here, literally right there, trying to soar up this face and going backwards half the flight. And I was sitting up there just ridge soaring, like eating popcorn, watching. I was just like, oh my God. And nothing I could do about it. And the difference of 50 meters can make so much difference. I couldn't believe how lucky I got. Nothing to do with pilot skill, just the luck of the draw. Okay, next slide. So modes of travel. We came up with this on our trip here. We had lots of modes. We had repair mode. We had suffer mode, bushwhack mode, Ginch mode. We'll get to that mode. So this was repair mode, and already on the first day, he had a gash like I'm not kidding you, must have been like 1.5 feet on his wing. So we'll play the first video, or it's called Repair 779. And he landed, and I was like, I felt like a good pilot that day. I'm like, I was climbing this guy, like, who is this guy? Like, you know? And he had 1.5 feet ripping his wing the whole day. So maybe I didn't feel so good after. I was like, holy shit, Keith. Yeah, the whole day he was flying with a big flapper this big, and I was like, oh yeah, I was a climber, like going out.
I don't think it matters if it's crooked.
Oh, I don't mind the crookedness.
We all think like that.
Oh, recent
You need
hands.
to move
Yeah,
your
yeah.
hands, yeah.
So this is actually not ripsaw. This is
Oh, I think I might have grabbed
kite repair tape for windsurf for kiteboarders. He says this is the best. This guy's really good at fabrics, and said this is the shit you want to repair your rear wing with. And I believe this guy with
Dude, that is a
fabrics.
sick repair.
He's making backpacks now.
That is smooth.
It's like Dyneema impregnated tape. It's
It might actually increase the performance of your wing.
amazing.
Today
I don't
knew
know if maybe like
everything
a
I did.
windsurfing or kiteboarding place. It's kiteboard repair tape. It's really thick, and actually throughout the trip, I could see the reflection on his wing on this. It's like tough shit.
That's a fucking great repair. That
It-
is rad.
I
Nice
think it's
work.
like factory. It looks beautiful.
right on.
So that was day one, and we're like, oh shit, we're vulnerable. Okay. So hike mode. That's Sheba. There was no bugs that night. That was the first day. We couldn't believe it. I don't understand why there was no bugs. It was really cold. It was probably about 0 at night. Next, 1 second here. Oh yeah. Yeah, next slide here. Yeah, so here is hike mode. Hike mode, self-explanatory. That's me hiking with at the start of the trip, I had about 26 kilograms on my back, which I think is the safe limit for my legs. Like I did fall over later in the bush once, and you fall over like such a sack of shit, and you have no control, and we determined 25 kg is like no more. So that's kind of the limiting factor with the pack raft, because it is a quite 7-day trip with a pack raft. It gets quite a bit. Yep.
Are you guys over your weight limit on the paraglider?
So Keith I'm neurotic with that stuff, and I get sketched out. So I'm like, no way, I can't do that. So I will like do anything to avoid it. But yeah. What question?
My question.
Oh.
They can't hear my
Oh. What's your question, Tanya? What do you want to ask me?
Should I go there and ask?
Do you want to go? Do you want to go here?
You want to ask?
What's your question? I can repeat it. Yeah.
My question is, because this is 27 kilograms.
That's 20. I think 26 for me. Yeah.
So when you fly a paraglider,
Yeah.
were you both of you and Kate flying over your limit?
Okay. So Tanya's question was, were we flying our gliders within our weight limits with our gear? And I was. Keith wasn't. It doesn't make a difference. He was like 3 kilograms over, and he was still climbing the same as me. And on glide, he would just pull away from me, and I was like, "You're a missile." And on the radio, I'm like, "Slow down, Keith. I can't keep." I'm like, my blocks are like overlapping. So yeah, It doesn't seem to be that particular. Maybe with a higher aspect wing, I'm not sure if that has a difference, but.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you pack everything? Like, what system do you use, or
Yeah.
because you're with the backpack there, and so how do you get everything?
That's a good question. Your question was, how do we pack stuff? I use a lot of Osprey compression bags. They're these little cubes, and I live by these things. I can like ram. The zippers are so durable. You can like sit on this thing and it's like, and just get this thing. They're little packing cubes. And then I do geek out and I see what fits in my bag, like Lego, and I can do it repetitively really fast. Like it's like, you kind of have to train, because time is of the essence when you're doing transitions between boat, hike, fly. You can't spend 2 hours packing your bag and in your tent in the morning. You're like, you have to be like, go. So you have to know what to do. So at home, I practice like where the things go, and then having things in like just being aware of where everything is really important. So yeah, and Keith's the same way. He's like fastidious with that stuff. He knows exactly what he's doing. So that's the next slide. Oh my God, that was the most epic day. So we were a little leery of the wind that was on the lake. This is actually these John Rossum and James Friesen also know this area very well. This is Chilko Lake, and we didn't have it as good of conditions that day, but this was glass. We came over this horizon and we're like, oh my God, like there's no wind on the lake, and we were at 4,000 meters, so we made some pretty big moves. This day was insane. We got so lucky. So this is.
We were envious when we saw you guys did that, because that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Do a year or two prior. Yeah.
You would have that day.
That was an amazing leg of flying, you guys.
That was.
Absolutely dream stuff.
I don't know if it gets any better than that.
No.
Yeah. It was insane. It was like flying a motorized aircraft that day for sure. Where are we here? So here we go. Lake is perfect. That we saw Chilko was glassy. We knew it was the day. So we're flying. So if you're to trace back here, we're going straight basically from Mailer Launch. We're almost due north, right, and then a little bit to the west, and we're over top of Chilko. Chilko Lodge is basically right here, and that's our next spot. So next slide. Where are we here? Northwest for sure. Let's give you a little reference point here. Here's Miller Launch. There's the Lillooet Bishop Divide. Chilko Lake. And there's Chilko Lodge. So next. This is 1, 2. I think it's like 160 maybe. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so this is something really cool with a Packraft. So this is often when I paraglide, I often think about how I feel on things, because it's really hard to quantify what's happening. There's so many variables, and I find at the end of the day, it's like, how did I feel in that moment? And that's how I felt good, I felt poor, I felt scared, I felt confident. So if you had no Packraft, I'd be shitting my pants, because I wouldn't know how the hell am I gonna get home? But this is a conveyor belt. So if I had no boat and I landed there, I'd be like, oh my God, how do I get home? But if I landed here, that's a bad landing zone. We didn't land there. We landed like over here somewhere. But if we landed here, and then you have this before you, it really changes the way you fly, and it actually makes it so enjoyable and actually safer. You can actually land by a lot of river bars and things that are close to the water, and you don't care. If you know the river's chill, you just float home. You can have a beer in your hand. It's an amazing way to get home. And this goes to a road.
Which way is home in this photo?
Well, home would be backwards, unfortunately, but we had to go all the way. We went into the horizon over here, and then we got a road, went to 100 Mile House. We were on this river for, I think, 60 kilometers maybe, but effortless. We didn't do a thing. We just floating down. To bushwhack would be insane. You wouldn't do it. So yeah, this is kind of the equivalent of Europe when it comes to the subway. Yeah, next slide. So after this epic day, we just talked about, it OD'd at around 5 o'clock, and we were just panicking. This is me trying to keep my shit dry and packing out a bag really fast. And then we're heading to the river right there, and we were just literally hopping on the river. So we did 125 flight that day, and then 30 on the river after, which was and we didn't even flinch. It's mind-blowing. I can't believe how we can do this. We landed right here, yeah, on this road. Yeah, this is a little ATV track that I don't even know what that road's doing.
Looks like Woodside clear cut.
Yeah. We flew into the flats actually, which I don't know if anyone's ever tried out there, and I think it's a great potential to go flying out there. Like there's a launch, and then there's just like it kind of looks like reminds me of Brazil. It's like on the backside of the Pacific Range, it's just flat as a pancake, and we just saw cloud streets forever. And there's a launch right at the Chilco Lodge. You could just go there, hang out at the lodge, go fly into the flats, and use the river to get home. Which is super cool. Well, actually, sorry, you can't use the river to get home. You could, yeah, you need a driver for that one. Sorry. But, next slide. Yeah, so here, transition mode. So one of the complexities of pack rafting with paragliding is the amount of gear you have. It's a little bit nuts. You really got to be at home first and just like, you got to figure out how this Lego monster fits together. But you get pretty fast at it and it gets pretty easy. But it is a time-consuming process, the switch. Average switch takes us about, from landing to actually floating is probably about 45 minutes if you're good. Because there's to pack a wing and fit it in your boat, and you could probably reduce that to like expert speed, and probably you could probably get 30 minutes, 25 minutes. Next slide. That's the start of the wildfire season. That was a massive thunderstorm that night. This is the Chilco down here. There is absolutely zero flat spots to sleep, so we had to hike up to the rim. And we got hammered out with rain. We were very stoked that day.
I had a question. What tents do you guys have, and how much do they weigh?
Yeah, so the tents that, the question was, what tents do we have? I have a Z-Pax Pleximid. It's a Cuban fiber or Dyneema tent. It weighs 600 grams. And it packs those little it's got a floor too. It's a really nice tent. James has one actually. I think they're great, and they're like a flat little pancake. He has a Black Diamond Solo. I forget the name of it. It's also really light. It's not Dyneema. The only benefit of Dyneema I can see over top of these tents is that maybe they're a bit lighter. They're definitely tougher. They're going to last your lifetime. And in the morning, they don't absorb water. So you just shake them out, and what's gone. His was wet, so he's packing that, a bit wet tent all day. But I mean, minor details. But this tent I've set my tent up probably, I don't know. I probably slept in it like 100 times, and it looks brand new. I don't know about these tents. I couldn't say the same about my other ones. Next slide. Yeah, so this water is electric blue, as you can see, and we're doing nothing, and we're traveling at about 11 kilometers an hour. That was our average speed. We're just hammering. I couldn't believe it. Next slide. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you can ask questions the whole way. Yeah.
I'm just wondering about how cold the river is.
Very.
What are you wearing?
Oh yeah, if you can go back a slide there, yeah. So the question was, what are we wearing? And it was completely inadequate. Yeah, that's the answer. Yeah, completely inadequate, actually. That's a rain jacket, which is not designed for whitewater. I've actually upgraded my kit this year, and I did a really cool mod. I can explain to you in a minute here, but the gear we're wearing is terrible. It's just a rain jacket, and the water is going up my back and filling up my dry. These are dry pants, so they're like it's a full Gore-Tex pants up to your hips with sewn-in boots, so it's completely waterproof. I'm wearing hiking shoes, the same shoes I hike in. That's a mistake. We learned a lot in this one. Was that we had feet problems at the end of the trip, cracking skin, and that was becoming an issue actually. Because once they're that wet, they don't really ever dry out. So now this year I've upgraded to a Pack Light. It's like a really cool splash jacket made by Kokatat. It's got like neoprene gaskets, and then a neoprene neck gasket, no latex gaskets. And then I use Gore-Tex socks now that are knee high. And then I have splash pants that are made by NRS. They're like super cheapos. and then the idea is that versatility. You want maximum versatility. So when you're hiking in the bush, you're going to walk through swamps. Your feet are going to get wet. You want to have Gore-Tex socks on. They work really. I've tested. They work pretty damn good. So you put the Gore-Tex socks on. You can walk through the muck. And you can take your pants off, right? Because if you have these style of pants on, you're stuck to a pair of pants with booties in it. So you're not going to wear those. They're not very comfortable. So you want to take the pants off so you have the waterproof booties to walk around in. And then when you're flying, you want some extra warmth. So you can actually fly in your rain pants, but your booties are off now. And then when you're on the river, you can wear both together. And then the top is as a dry top, like I said there. And then I want a camp pillow, and you need a float. So what I did was I sew in a big pocket on my chest and my back, and then I put my camp pillows on my stomach and my back, which is actually the same flotation, like what's that guy who said Eureka? I don't know. He wouldn't know the difference. You're just displacing, you're still floating. So you have this a vest. You have a splash top with custom pockets with a camp pillow on the front and the back, and it works so good because you have a camp pillow and you have a rain jacket and you have a paddle jacket. And you can fly in the thing. So it's this kind of you need the versatility. Yeah. None. Yeah. This is a PDF with camp pillows in it, but then we got rid of the PDF and then we've sewn the pockets. It's less weight and more utility, which is the obsession in this sport because you're limited 25 or you're breaking your legs. So yeah. Next slide. What are we doing here? Oh yeah, so this is Ginch mode. This is a unique mode of travel when you cannot afford the weight of a pair of shorts. So you wear your boxers. So here we landed by the Chilko. We flew into the flats. Chilko Lodge is right here. This is Chilko Lake. We landed right here, and then we floated down the river. And then in the springtime, the rapids are way too high. We could not run this canyon section, which normally you can. So we walked 9 miles around it. And we're just starting to walk. And these people from Vancouver, in an air-conditioned cab, on an ATV, came rocking up, flying down the road beside us. And we're like, what is going on out here? And they were panicking. They were like, we're going to run out of gas. Like, have you seen our friends? And we're like, hey, how's it going? Like, can we get a ride? And they're like, no, man, like, do you know anything about these machines? Like, we have 2 gas bars. Is that enough to make? And they were just like completely off the deep end. And we're like, whoa. Don't bring me back to the city. Like, this is why I came out here. Like, what's going on? And we got a little crazy, but they ended up giving us a ride. We convinced them that 2 bars was enough. We had no idea. We didn't care. We wanted to go 9 miles that way because it was like 30 degrees Celsius, and it was really hard. It was nasty walking. So they gave us a ride, and then sure enough, their buddies came by, and they had fun, and they figured it out. So I think that'd be next slide. Yeah, they dropped us off here, and then the guy says, where are your airplanes? This was so funny. I said, they're in our backpack. And the guy goes, where's your airplanes? Come on. I said, they're in our backpack. And he goes, oh, for Christ's sakes. And then he walks away. But we couldn't convince them to get out of their air-conditioned cab. They wouldn't get out. I said, this is the rapid here of that movie. There was a movie filmed in like the 90s about Americans who died on the White Mile. There's a mile-long, massive rapid here. And I said, you guys should hike down. It's right in front of it. It's spectacular. They wouldn't get out. So anyways, next slide. So we finished the trip at Alexis Creek. So this is where the Chilko goes past the first civilization. Again, the Chilko, it drains from this massive lake. This is the creek here. Alexis Creek, this is a major highway towards, I forget the name, I think it's 21 or I forget, 15 or, what's that? 20, yeah. Alexis Creek, we got out at this bridge here, and we started hitchhiking because we thought we could make faster progress than going down this very slow stretch of river. And we got taken in. The hospitality in this town was next level. Some nurse came by from Vancouver, actually, and she was doing a shift in a kind of a nursing station there. And she said, "What in the hell are you guys doing here?" I think I had pants on at that point. Yeah, and she said, "You guys should just come by." And she drove us to town, got us groceries, and we slept in the front yard of this little nursing post, and we showers and everything. It was great. She was awesome. Next slide. That's us right before she came by, and she goes, "What is happening here?" I've never seen this shit in my life. It's like like 50 people in this town, and we're like, a lot of plastic on the ground. Yeah. Yeah. Next slide. That's their front yard of the place there. It was great. Yeah. Next slide. So we didn't try Ginch mode here. We didn't dare. We're on the road. But we're trying to go to Williams Lake, and that was a really hard hitchhike. Actually, that took us way longer than we thought. And next slide. All right, so we made it to Williams Lake the night before. We actually had to stay in Williams Lake for one night because no one would pick us up. So I couldn't believe it. We're on the edge of town, like two dudes with backpacks on, like, come on. Nobody. All day. Well, not all day, probably from like 12 till dark. And then we had to call this service. It was the only public transport in Williams Lake, and it was this old granny. And she gave us a ride right to this mountain called, I think it was Lime Peak. It's right in front of Clinton. And Alex Raymond gave us this tip. There's a launch up there. And I said, "Granny, drive us there." And she charged us $60. It was the cheapest thing. I think she was locked in like this old price bracket of what rides were worth. And I was like, that is worth way more. She was, and we gave her a big tip. She was so lovely.
Did he tell you to go up to, was it Jasmine? At the Fire Watch?
No, there's no, there's a radio tower up there. Lime Peak? Or above Clinton.
Probably right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There might be a fire.
Alex is supposed to take me up there because I've got 40 acres, 56 miles. We're Beaver Dam Lake.
Oh, okay.
So you can see the mountain range right there.
Yeah.
It's get up to that freaking tower.
Yeah, actually, that was, I mean, if you don't mind bushwhacking, that was the most pleasant bushwhack. It wasn't a bushwhack.
Yeah, no,
It was.
It goes right into a Forest Service station where I'm thinking.
I mean, this could be different because it was gated, the one we went up. I'm pretty sure this is Lime, or one of those, yeah. And no bushwhack. It was bladed for a ski run. We couldn't believe it. We walked right to the top. Next slide. This was what we found. This is not the launch Alex was talking about. We were like, what? This is perfect. It looked like a perfect launch. Like this moss. It was bizarre. So Clinton's right here. Actually, I think right. Clinton's right in front here. Yeah. And then Fraser Valley is right here. That's the Fraser River through there. Yeah, Keith's like, oh yeah, we're getting out of here. And the psychos were ripping, and it was like 10:30. So we're like, sweet, let's fly. Next slide. Yeah, escaping the flats. So Clinton's quite flat. We were trying to make it back to Pemberton. So we had hitchhiked from 100 Mile up here. Clinton's right here. Lillooet should be somewhere here. And then we probably had the most brutal fight of our lives getting home that day. That was borderline insanity. Let me just check. Brutal. Yeah, here we go. So there was massive fires in Cornwall that day. That was when the big fire started there. So we could not fly this way. We had to go this way. We could see it from the launch. It was like this. It looked like a volcano. It was insane. It was really fresh too, so there was no smoke in the area. You could just see this, like it just had started, and you could see this. It was really cool to see. Next slide. Oh, cool. Okay, so we had made it all the way back. Basically, we thought we were going to make it back to Pemby that day, but we did not, and we only made it to Carpenter Lake. And we slept around, somewhere around here we landed. This is basically Carpenter Lake is right here. Lillooet is right up in here. This is the, what's it called? Yalakum Valley. And then that flight was like 1 step forward, 3 steps back. It was about 25K headwind. We couldn't land anywhere up high. It was so windy. There was no alpine. There's burnt sticks everywhere. There's nowhere to land except for the valley bottom, and we didn't want to do that. And then we finally found this small pocket of alpine, and we're like, just put her down there, and we went right and landed here. We were exhausted. Next slide. Yeah, so that flight, we landed here. That was the last photo. It was quite a short flight, but very windy. So here's Clinton. We touched the side of Lillooet. We just about bombed out there. We got super low. Up the bridge. This is Bridge Valley. Bridge should be right. That's Bridge. Nope, Bridge is right here. We went up the Yalakum Valley here. We camped right there. And then our second flight home was a massive one from there all the way to, next slide. Yes, now this was the glory shot. Play the video of 849. Electo. Sure, gliders were worked up here because there's so much damn ice. What to do? So that was the furthest I think anyone's ever been up the Lillooet Valley. We got further than Igor, pretty sure. But it wasn't me, it was Keith. So American has the furthest by about 50 meters. Keith went to here, that point right there. I went to about there and crapped my pants. Because there was no thermals, like it was completely shut off above the ice. And then I had a glide ratio back to the only landing. I was being responsible. I'm like, dude, it's like a 7-to-1, and I'm like, got no lift. He's like, oh, we're fine. And I'm like, bullshit. I'm going back. Like, 7-to-1 is, nah, it's okay. And he was like, oh, dude, we got to keep going. I'm like, nope. So I turned back. But he's also 9 years younger than me and has a lot more. I've lost a bit of that. I'm staring at 7.1 to 1. No, we're going back. And then next slide. That's elect. Yeah, that's the furthest we got. Actually, if you poke over top of it, that's the Bishop River. And it looks absolutely amazing for flying. Like, it looks totally good. It's just getting home there's no raft home at that point. You're going towards the ocean. This ends up in that would be Bishop. That goes to Hamathco. So if you put it in here, you end up in the Butte Inlet. Next slide. So Keith landed here. We had a technical problem here. Keith landed in the most beautiful place ever. Amazing landing. I landed on top of this mountain because his radio died, and I lost him where he went. And I wanted to land high because I wanted to make sure I was above him so I could glide down to him and land. And he was super sorry his radio died because he was like frolicking around and just basking, and I had to hike down like 1,000 meters. And then we started bushwhacking after that.
Was that a bit sketch with the rocks there? There's a lot of...
No, actually, this is probably the worst the worst representation of this landing. It was like it was dreamy. It was huge, and no mosquitoes because there was 1,000 grasshoppers, and this is at 1,000 meters up by the glaciers. We couldn't believe these grasshoppers, like just like swarms of them, and no bugs. So I think they were munching them all. We landed up high because the lake below us here looks extremely windy, and that's the headwaters of the Lillooet. So next slide, that's the money shot. That was that's the best. That's the Lillooet Glacier. Alecto would be like, I think like up back in there, and then that's Lillooet River coming down there. And we're happy now, but we bushwhacked down. We thought it'd be easy, and that was absolutely heinous. Next slide. No, it was too windy. We were scared. It's a tight valley. And one thing that Keith and I learned on this trip is that silty lakes, especially shallow, that lake's called Silt Lake, but silty lakes that are shallow don't represent the wind very well. So we couldn't tell. We're like, it looks calm, and Keith's like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I want to land high, and Keith's like, yeah, maybe you're right. Because in the ocean, you can tell like the wind has enough fetch to get these things going, but these small little pocket lakes, like, not a good idea. And then later, when we heard bushwhacking down, the alders were like bent over, and we're like, thank God we didn't do that. So don't trust small alpine lakes. Especially silty. Yeah.
Last question. So you mentioned these radio died.
Mm-hmm.
So I am curious. Well, first of all, I kind of lost track how many days you were.
Me too. Yeah. Each camp is a night. Sorry. Yeah.
5 days.
That one's yeah.
So how are you charging your radios?
No.
Do you have a phone connection? Do you have 2 radio batteries?
So the question was, do we have 2 radio batteries and are we charging them? We have solar panels, so we have like a small solar panel. I find it never keeps up, so you're always losing. So right now I'm developing, I don't know, I'm sewing this thing. It's a solar hat. You think it's funny. You think it's funny, but you need to be constantly charging. Like, these solar panels suck. And we are like, so I'm sewing a solar panel on my hat. It's gonna look, you'll see it. It's gonna look ridiculous, but that's what it comes down to. Yeah. So it's like you need to be always sucking juice. And yeah.
So were you preserving your radio battery?
No, because I knew mine would last. I work with the radio, and I know how long mine works. Like, I'm quite confident how long my radio works for. Keith wasn't aware of it, and then his crapped out at like the worst time.
Which radios did you guys use?
I use a ICOM V86, and then Keith uses a Yaesu.
Okay.
It's a nice one. Yeah. They're heavy. Yeah, that one. Next slide. Here we go. This was fucked. This was the worst. I've bushwhacked a lot in my life. I work in forestry. I usually have a chainsaw in my hand, but this was insane. We bonked. I bonked because I had 1,000 meters to get down to him. I bonked like at the bottom, and I was like, Keith, I need a granola bar. Like, you need to help me, man. I'm like, I'm fucked. And it was like midnight. So that photo in the meadows you saw up there, that was the landing, and this is us that was like 5 o'clock, and it took us till 1 a.m. to get to the lake below us. I never had anxiety before bushwhacking, but I got anxious. Yeah, I didn't think we were gonna make it. And then at 1 a.m., Keith goes, "Oh, we're at the lake." He literally walked into the lake. He had no idea. I was like, "Oh, sweet." I was like, "Fuck yes!" I was in pretty rough shape, and we inflated our rafts, and then floated out like in space into this lake, looking for a campsite. We bumped into a sandbar and set up. Next slide. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, and then next slide. and that's where we ended up, and that felt fantastic. That was the headwaters of the Lillooet. Next slide. All right. So we paddled 90, I think it was 90K, 89 or 90K that day, right back to Pemberton. So we did the whole river. Well, to Pemberton. It goes to the lake. So we can, you can play video 853. Oh, bushwhack. Oh, that was after the bushwhack. That's good. That's where we camped. That's where Lillooet is. I'd been there the year before. Previously, I flew up there solo and paddled it down myself. So I was familiar with that. There's Keith's Landing up here. It was quite windy. And I landed way above him in the snow, above his peak, going, where is this guy? I was pretty choked.
What gliders are you guys on?
Zeolite 2 GTs. Next, you can play the next video. You can probably play him. Play Upper Lillooet 858. This looks, so when you have silty water, it often looks a little more rowdier than it is, but it's not. It's a common phenomenon in whitewater. People think it's harder, but it's got an evil look to it. Yeah, that's actually not that bad.
So would you say 90 kilometers of that?
That was 90. No. That was only. No, I would say that was 2 kilometers of that and about
Yeah, okay, that sounds better.
80. It's very chill. Yeah. I think that's about it. And then we went back and we got a burger that night. It was great. So I'll keep it as short as I can here. Silt Lake. We can play video 792. Amazing. Yeah, this was great. So the coolest part about most of the trip was we were flying like tip to tip all day. So the perspective was just so cool. It really changes everything. And most of these flights, there's quite a bit of landings. We're not psycho here. Like there's quite a bit of. It doesn't feel. I didn't feel unsafe the whole flight. The only safety aspect I think is the insanity of hiking back up. You just want to stay high. You only got so much food. We had about 8 days of food at us, and we eat about 700 grams of food a day. That's kind of our average. Okay, next slide. Round 2. So we decided to do another crazy trip. I called Keith up and I'm like, should we do it again? He's like, yeah, I was just about to call you. I was like, oh shit. So then we started from. I'll keep this one really short because it's almost the same it's the same thing. So next slide. Sorry, keep a slide. We drove to Tatla Lake, where there's White Saddle Air, often used to access their wildfire helicopter support, and they're also used to, like a lot of backcountry guys use them for getting into like Waddington, Hamathco. White Saddle, right? Is that what it's called? Yeah. Okay, next slide. So we drove there. and we wanted to go see how close we can get to Mount Waddington. We thought we could go right over top of it. Yeah, no, I don't think so. It's like an ice box. Like you get close and you're like, oh, in the middle of summer there should be dirt. There's none. There's like ice everywhere, and we learned from Electo that gliders don't work very well over glaciers. So we got about 20K from it. I think we got to about, next slide. Yeah, we got end of this guy, and that's Waddington right there. We're about 20K from it, 21K I think, maybe a bit more. And we were scared. Yeah, there's no way I wanted to go any further. Over top of this, it's just like ice everywhere. I don't even know how a glider would work. But there's a Cumi over top of Waddington, so we're like, it goes, but like the commitment factor is just insane. We didn't have it. Next slide. So what we learned a lot on that trip was these fjords, like they chug. They suck a lot of air in, and it's a game between hiding behind what feature to get protection from the, like, it's a big funnel. And it's sucking, it's drawing through all these little crevices, and we got to figure out which one can we hide behind, because once you get exposed to this west wind that comes sucking through these fjords, you're useless. So on this day, for example, we were, this is our push to Waddington. Waddington's right here, right there actually. We got as close as we dared, came back. This is Nirvana Pass. And we came back here. I got extremely low lee side here. That was really scary for me. I thought I was bombing out in the middle of nowhere. Keith was cheering me on. I climbed out with him, and the day was pretty cruisy, and we thought we were going to go all the way to Bella Bella that day. And all it took was one crossing where we got hammered by this wind that came chugging right through, and we got exposed to it, and we were on the ground within about 5 minutes. So the day went from like, oh yeah, we got this, to like, what the hell just happened? And you can maybe tell from these clouds. Yeah. But there are a lot of landings, so it was safe still. Next slide. That was absolutely gorgeous place to camp. This is Keith's quote, which I think is very true. Yeah, you get about 2 days to get in, and then you get about the rest to get out. This is a nice little lake with a great shower there. This is about halfway between White Saddle and Bella Bella, in the kind of middle of nowhere. You can play Nowhere Launch. We're in the middle of nowhere.
Try and find a lake.
Cycles were pretty strong here, and this was like 10:30 in the morning. Pretty steep slope. That was the lake we camped right down there in the morning.
Oh yeah, you're
That's only 300 meters actually. That's not very high. It was a very low launch, and we had to work for it. Look at the clouds. We weren't too stoked on those. Pretty windy. We scratched for like an hour. All of us, we nearly bombed out like 10 times. And then finally, we landed beside a river. Next slide. Oh, that's me loving the bug spray. Next slide. That's that same lake. That's the launch. Yeah, we had very limited terrain. So when you're that high sometimes, it's hard to find enough relief. We found you get pretty shallow launches. But they work because you're pretty high. So it does work, but you really got to believe. Next slide. That was bombing out right in the middle between Bella Coola and White Saddle. I bombed out first that day, and I was getting pummeled with wind super low, and I just gave up. Next slide. So we bushwhacked down to a series of lakes. Turner Lake. It's a lake that people fly into with float planes, and they rent canoes up there. Absolutely beautiful place to go. There's like 7 or 8 lakes, and there's like a small portage of like 200 meters between these lakes. We had no idea we landed here. We're like, oh, cool. There's people here. Some guy gave me a beer at the bottom of this lake. I was like, yes! We had no idea this existed. But we had to get through this first. It was insane. Next slide. And then we got to the lakes. This is a dock. This is where the float planes land. We're like, what in the hell? So this is above Anarco River. Anarco River is just below it. Next slide. That's a really nice waterfall. Husum Falls. Turner Lakes is to my left over there. Grouse Peak is right there. Next slide. That's the headwaters of the Anarco. That's Stillwater Lake. This water goes right to Bella Coola, and it joins the Bella Bella River. Next slide. And we're on the Anarco. I don't think anyone's ever paddled the upper Anarco before, and I wouldn't recommend it, but it definitely beats hiking. We just piddled down this very low volume creek. Our average speed was probably about 5 or 6 kilometers an hour, but we weren't expending any energy. And there were so many salmon in this river, they were vibrating under our boat. You go into a pool and the bottom would change color. And we got there just before the grizzlies showed up. There was no dead fish, and the people said you nailed it with timing because there would have been 1 million grizzlies, and they say it's a wildlife viewing area for grizzlies. So we were thankful we nailed that timing. Not that they'd be interested in us, but next slide. And it looks gnarly, I know it's not. It's a camera angle, but it's a class 3 rapid, but this is about as much as you want to do with the merchandise inside your boat. Because if you lose that boat and you go for a swim, it's, I don't know, $15,000 down the river. So it becomes an economical challenge, not so much a tactical challenge. Yeah, that was a great rapid at the Anarco upper reaches. I don't know if anyone's ever been there. Next slide. And this is portage mode, a mode that's awkward because you can't put the boat on your back. It's horrible. I'm smiling because I've done this before a lot in my life. Keith, I've never seen him look in horror before. He's like, what the fuck? And I was like, yeah, buddy, this is what it's all about. We'll get through it. So, but it's these boats are delicate, so you got to be careful not to pop them. But they go, and this is the Anarco. Just went through a braid, went through a bunch of beavers had messed the place up, and we found it again. Next slide. And we're back in Bella Bella. And some locals saw us upriver, invited us to their house for dinner, and we had pizza and a house to stay at. People were just fucking awesome in this town. Invited us. We had everything for us, all we needed. And next slide. That's it. We went to the ocean. It was amazing. So the Anarco flows into the Bella Bella, and the Bella Bella goes to the inlet there. It looks just like Squamish before people showed up. Next slide. And then this guy, which was super cool. This guy here, Eric, he's a retired faller. This is property right here. This is actually a launch that a previous paraglider used to own. That I don't know. He lived in the Fraser Valley actually. I forget his name, but we went up there. He goes, "Hey, there's a launch behind my house. Why don't you come check it out?" So we went up there with him in his ATV. He drove us up there in an ATV after making us breakfast and letting us stay at his house and showers. And it was amazing. We were so dirty. Can't believe he let us in the door. Next slide. I don't think I captured it. He said, "Hey, I need some exercise," and he carried my bag up with him to the launch, and I was just walking up. I was like, "This is incredible." And he cut all the trees down for us because it was a bit overgrown. And we did not make it out that day. It was super inverted, as you can see by the smoke. And then we hitchhiked all the way back to the car and went back home. So that was the end of that trip. Next slide. Yeah, so I guess that's section 1. And in section 2, I'll kind of keep super duper duper short because we already kind of talked about it. But it was kind of like how to do this. So it's not difficult to fly with the boat at all. It's easier than paragliding. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so this goes more, this is kind of talking to what boats mean. So having a pack raft, I think, makes complete sense around here. Having the ability to get home reliably. If you're into pushing past the milk run, if you're into going like what's over the back, if you're curious, I think the pack raft is the answer to actually do that. Because what's holding you back a lot of the time is likely the walkout, or is likely the stress of how am I going to get home. So if you can eliminate that with a blow up pool toy, and if you know if it's the Squamish River, if it's the Indian River, if it's the Capilano River, there's a lot of rivers which minimal training you can get into doing these quite safely. If you go any harder than that, it gets a bit complicated, but it's the tool to push further. I would say it's if you're going to get a pack raft before pushing up a glider. I think is the way to progress your ability to fly further. Not by next slide. This is stuff that most of us know about. Next slide. Yeah. Yeah. Team flying, that was a big thing that makes a huge difference. Like flying solo or flying with a buddy, the difference is like, it feels like cheating. Like it's like twice as efficient. Like you feel like a superhero when you're with your buddy. You're like, oh my God, this day is so easy because he found half the climbs. Like, oh, sweet. Takes the workload off, you're relaxed. Like for example, sometimes I would get beat up and I'd be like, I just want to follow someone, I'd follow Keith. And then he'd get beat up and he'd be like, can I just follow you? Sure, we say on the radio, man, I just want to be autopilot. But you get tired, so you can really pass the onus to someone else, and it takes a lot of stress off, especially for big trips like this. Like you want to have a buddy. Not to say going solo isn't cool too, but yeah, it's pretty handy. Don't let the radio die. Keith put that one in. Next.
You guys have satellite?
We did, yeah.
The transponders?
We actually communicated after that when our radios died. He's like, I landed up here. And I was like, okay. So we're kind of talking about this right now. Why pack rafting? Next slide. Yeah, it's less finicky than paragliding, that's for sure. So the river always flows. Half the time when you're choosing your river, you have to choose carefully, but when you're choosing a river which is appropriate for your grade and your ability, it's going to flow. If you're catching thermals, it's flowing. It has to. It's just the way it works. There's no way that thing's not flowing if you're going up in a paraglider. So you know you're going to get home. Next slide. There's limitations because it's heavy, so it sucks. It's when you're walking, you can't walk basically. If you're doing bushwhacking, you're only walking because you made a mistake. You should be landing beside a river or on top of a mountain, and if you can't do that, well, maybe you didn't make a mistake. Maybe the conditions weren't right, and you chose to play it safe. But you shouldn't be walking with the shit on your back. Next slide. Fly-acking, the art. It's all about the positioning, as I was saying, like about landing high or landing at the bottom. It changes the way you fly. It changes the way you look at a map. So once you put a boat in, you're like, okay, I have 2 days off work. Okay, so if I go up this drainage and I don't make it home, well, tomorrow I can just float home, and I know I'm going to be home for work. So you can it kind of changes the way you can plan things, and it changes the way you can, because the river is going to flow. You can very predictably make it home. It travels at 10 kilometers an hour. It's 80 long. It's going to take us all day. I'm going to make it back to my car. So it really helps you if you follow positioning correctly. If you land by a river or land on top of a mountain, and are able to get yourself to a river without bushwhacking, it's a pretty reliable means of travel for sure. Next slide. Do you fly or float? And that's a question often that we ask ourselves in the air when we're flying. Like, do we fly or float? Like, what's our objective right now? Like, do we try to push and go over top of this drainage and then jeopardize our chances of landing by a river to get to the next one? So that's kind of that's the art of it, and that's quite tricky actually. And that's something I'm trying to develop with Keith, is making these on-fly decisions in the air. Going, okay, do we this is a 30K push. It's getting weak. Do we just take the river and then take 2 days longer, or do we just go for the gusto and send it? So it's tricky, and I think there's not much on that. That's an art. It's quite cool because it's like you're like juggling these massive forces, thermal, river in your hand. It's almost like you feel like God. It's pretty cool. It's a very powerful feeling, but then you get thwarted pretty easy too. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's unreal. Next slide. Yeah. So just to give you an idea, this is basic river running 101 here, but like if you see things like this, that's a canyon. Sorry, that's not a canyon. That's a canyon. Like these are features like this where you see chokes in the river, likely are canyons. You see, so you got to be realistic when you're reading a river. You can't go over 4% of a river. If you look at average gradients, that's like really high. You're looking for like 1 to 2% average gradient with wide open areas like the Pemberton, the Lillooet, Squamish, or Lillooet, Squamish, Pitt. Stave. There's rivers you can do it safely. At Narco. But yeah, you got to learn how to like read a map and basically simple math, but you can average gradients. I would say you're looking at 1 to 2%. Next slide. That's a great resource if you want to learn about whitewater, get into it, get into clubs, talk to people. Huge network of people in Vancouver here to learn how to paddle. They go down the Capilano flows all the time. It's super beginner. It's so much fun. Just learning how to paddle a river and catch eddies and use that energy is a really satisfying experience. It's a great way to travel. Next slide. That is, don't know where we're on the bridge. A bridge near Bella Coola. Next slide. Weather, yada, yada, yada. We all know about weather. Next slide. Next. Gear mania. Constant tinkering. I swear, I bought a hand. I can't sew it all, but I bought a Speedy Stitcher. It's like a little hand awl. And I've been driving myself nuts because how slow it is, but I'm doing these modifications. You always are like tinkering on things, and the gear has to work because like every ounce counts and everything has to have two purposes. And you got to think in this really weird way of like, it's got to work for a boat, it's got to work for a kayak. And I find that like a kayak and a boat, they're almost the same thing in a weird sense. Like it's like one's your vehicle home and it's kind of like they're quite united in the end of the game, at the end of the day. So everything has to think about both. Besides the wing, everything is double purpose. Like a rain jacket for a paddling jacket, pillows. I don't bring a sleeping bag. I sleep in a duvet cover basically with my wing inside. That has nothing to do with paddling, but it makes it lighter. Like there's a bunch of, I have a hiking pole, like my paddle shaft for hiking. I welded up a little tip that I slot into the end of my paddle. So now I don't take hiking poles. I just take the shaft of my paddle. There's a bunch of weird. I should have brought some of my stuff. Show and tell. It's a bunch of weird things where you're like, but then you add it all up and you're like, whoa! I just saved like so much volume and size, and then it becomes possible. These things are really easy to make. You just got to think of them. You got to be weird enough to think of these things. 25 kilograms. That's a lot. I'm only 65 or 70, sorry. Well, it could be more. Yeah, the total kit weighs, I would say, 8 days, 25, yeah. I could probably get it to 24, yeah. But, like, I'd like to incorporate hunting. On the trip, I have a really ultralight rifle, which weighs like 400 grams. So I could shoot, like, we saw so many grouse. It's a 22 WMR it's a carbon fiber rifle. Yeah, and we saw so many grouse, like so many grouse. I could have killed 10 grouse in that trip. So if we factored in that, like that's quite a bit of food. Like 10 grouse, that's like a 2 fly rod. If you got confident in that, yeah, you could feel like more like a little more self-sufficient and less reliant on Mountain House to get you through.
Fishing, would that work at all, or is that not practical?
Fishing, where we were, I could almost poke them. Like when I was paddling, I was bumping them with my paddle. I could feel dug, 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 dug. Thousands.
So like if you had a net or something with it, you could easily...
Yeah, if you had a gun.
Incorporate a little harpoon into your
You could.
steak.
That's a good idea, actually. You could. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Or a little tenkura rod, or like I don't know, some little tiny fly rod. You tell the conservation officer that. That's right. Yeah. But I don't think they get mad at you. Yeah.
Did you portion your food and was it enough? Were you ever hungry? You said 700 grams a day.
Yeah. So how do we portion our food? I would have three dehydrated Mountain House foods a day, and then I would say I'm going to get hungry and have 4. So I would just say 4 every day.
Did you prep your own, like just use a dehydrator? Or?
I wish I could afford one of those things, and I'm thinking about it, but I would just buy it. Yeah.
Dehydrators are expensive, like $200.
Freeze dry is different.
Freeze dry, yeah.
It's actually significantly lighter, and you can eat different types of food with freeze dry, like fatty foods, like meat and those. I think dehydrated, it's a different. I'm not too savvy on this, but I think it's different. But yeah, we just. So what I would do is actually I would cut the bags open because those bags are quite bulky. You know, it's like the big. They give you the. It's like a bowl to eat out of. You get rid of that, and I would save 3 or 4 for the whole trip. Wash them out, put them on the side, and then I would get these dollar store little tiny Ziploc bags. And the amount of food they give you in those things is just about a handful. So you put them in these little Ziploc bags, zip them up, and then you put them in one of those off-spray packing bags, and they're like bricks. And one of those bricks is like the same size as like 2 of those packages they give you at the store, like the big aluminum things. So if you open those things up and put them in little Ziploc bags, you really reduce the size. That was a handy little tip.
What kind of food did you have?
It was just a freeze-dried garbage. You know, garbage. Just garbage. Yeah, it was just like whatever. You know, like spaghetti and meatballs or whatever flavors they have. It was horrible. I wish it wasn't that stuff, but I mean, it's such limited things. Hence why I would love to get one of the freeze-dry machines. Like a washing machine, it looks like, yeah. They're like $3,000. Oh shit, we better get out of here.
So, Corey, I remember doing a trip or 2 with you before, and you wouldn't bring a stove
Oh yeah, right.
because they weigh, I mean, add up the weight of your pot, the fuel, all that stuff, the stove itself. So, did you have, for these trips, did you have a stove on you?
Yeah, so the question was, do you bring a stove on trips like this? And I think absolutely not. I think it's completely useless. You're already going to suffer. Just eat cold food. Just deal with it. Just deal with it. Put it under your armpit for half an hour if you want to. But, like for the weight of a stove and a pot, you need a pot. Or you need a mug. That's all you need is a mug. I think John would agree. Because if you're dying, you need to melt water, and you're that high in the summertime, and you've landed, you got a lot of problems. But you can make a fire. If you have to, you can make a fire if you really want to. Half the time, at the end of the day, you've landed, you're tired. I don't want to put a scar in the backcountry with a fire anyways. I don't really like doing that too much.
So no coffee?
I don't drink coffee in the morning on those trips, no. But people would say life's too short, and a stove's not the end of. They're heavy, and they're big, but if you're good, you're walking through the bush, a little bit of dry grass, you put that in your pocket. A little bit of dry grass, put that in your pocket. And then we get to camp, you got a whole bunch of fire starter in your pocket. All you need to do is find a few sticks. And this company called Purcell Trench out of the States sells these titanium sticks. You could probably find them on eBay or Amazon. And all you need is 2 metal sticks. You rest them over 2 rocks, and you can put your pot on top of them, and you can make a fire underneath, and then you're fine. So it's 2 sticks, 2 metal sticks. It look like straws, and you can reduce a whole stove and everything.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if you're carrying just like a jet oil but without fuel.
Nothing.
Just kind of fire.
And all those freeze-dried foods work without heat just fine. They just take about an hour to get palatable. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, but they work just fine. And you put them on your armpit. Yeah, fine. But it's pretty savage.
Just out of curiosity, were you flying with reserve, without reserve?
Oh, reserve for sure. Yeah, I would never fly it.
Undermount, top mount?
It's a top mount for me. I use a harness called my Bogdan. I think they're the best harnesses ever for BC. They're just light, and I think a front mount reserve for me, I like peace of mind when it's like holy shit, and I'm like, oh, stay open, and I can see this little red handle in front of me. It just does something to my mind where I'm just like, there it is, okay. But if I don't know where, like, okay, go down the riser, yeah, there it is. Like, I don't know, it messes with my mind a bit. So.
It's important for you to use your pillows like underneath the bunk cushion.
It's a good.
Like how this was all kind of.
Yeah, there's no room for a pillow inflated. It's the pack raft. We're flying without protection, which is a no-no. I don't like doing that, but there's no choice.
If you brought a sleeping mat,
Yeah. I'm not sure what that's gonna do. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah. I think that's about it. If you guys have any more, or next slide here. What else we got in here? Oh yeah, this is random amount of. This is Keith trying to organize the mania. I just throw it all on the floor and go, oh my god. Don't know what's gonna happen here.
Power banks, okay.
Power is an issue because I fly with a cell phone and a Vario. I fly with 2. I actually fly with 3 instruments. I'm like, give me as much bloody help as I can in this sport because I can't see this shit. And I'll eat a whole cell phone, 100% to 0 in a day. So I go through 1 power bank a day. So I actually have a lot of weight with energy, hence the hat. It's gonna look ridiculous. It's the samurai helmet. It's coming. I'm gonna make an online shop for all this random shit that no one's gonna buy except for some random dude like me. Like, this is the weirdest shit 2 people will buy the random shit. Like, why would you? Oh, okay. If you're doing that, when would I ever do that? Yeah.
So, did you have sleeping bags? Or you
No sleeping bag.
using the paraglider?
So I've developed this product called the Mayway Duvet. I'm sure I'm not the original, but I'm sure someone's thought of this before. Put dirty laundry inside of a sack, and it looks like it's basically you put your paraglider inside of a duvet cover, but don't stack it this way. Stack the ribs this way, so it doesn't open on you. And it's bloody warm. I've slept India at 4,000 meters many nights, -5 with down jacket on. It's hot. This thing is warm.
But you do have a thermos.
Oh yeah. I'm on an animal.
I always
Close.
Does it make a sound when you move the paraglider?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It does make a sound. Just like when you're packing it, same sound. It's horrible.
Like, I don't know. Well, I guess you're too tired.
No, I sleep with earplugs in. Yeah. Always. But
I was wondering if it like keeps waking you up every time you move.
it probably does. I sleep like shit half the time. Yeah. Probably does. Who sleeps well on a thermarest with a paraglider on top of them? Nobody. I don't think anyone does. No, it's a problem. Sleep deprivation becomes a problem. You feel like you're drunk after 7 days. Yeah, you get a little fucked up. Yeah.
What kind of do they cover? Like really lightweight?
So I sewed my own up. It's I didn't sew my own. I had someone sew it for me. My God. It's a silk liner, Western Mountaineering silk liner that I've cut opened up, and then the top is paragliding fabric, sprayed with silicone to keep it waterproof. Because when you're sleeping, and the things on top of you, the edges touch the side of the tent, so the top surface touches the side, so it's waterproof. So there's water beads off it, and then there's this little hope in hell that it's breathable, and I put some mesh in the middle of the duvet. Just as like, maybe some vapor will come out of there. Probably not.
Oh, Keith.
Keith sleep? I don't know how that guy sleeps. I look at his tent and I'm like, dude, what are you doing in there? He's got his concertina bag on him. I don't understand. That is a new level of tough man. That guy can sleep on stones.
He sleeps in his concertina.
Yeah. It's like it's the concertina bag opened with the wings still. I'm like, dude, I don't know how you do that. It's like it looks ridiculous. But he's like, I slept so well last night. I was like, man, I tried my hardest. I had multiple people sew this thing up. I was thinking about this for weeks, and you just bought a concertina bag and just fell asleep. Like, yeah, that guy is incredible. I don't know how he did it, but he's tough. That guy is meant for outdoors. I think there's maybe one more slide here. Here's the master at the work. This guy, Keith Nimbus Bags, he's coming out with a company right now. This guy's really talented with sewing. He specializes in Dyneema stuff. He's gonna make some cool stuff. Look for Nimbus Bags. He might give me one to try out, which I'm stoked.
Can you sew a paraglider?
What's that?
Can you sew a paraglider?
Oh, he can sell more than a paraglider. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if he could make one, but he probably could. Yeah. Next slide. I think that's it. Oh yeah, that's my bag. I'm like, this is too good to be true. Yeah. Yeah. Next slide. Next slide. That's it, I'm pretty sure. Oh shit, you asked. This is actually not from the trip. This is a local flight. That's Ice Maker Mountain, and this is with James. Actually, James was there on that day. That's Keith. That's me and Keith took the photo. This is right by Squamish. Clendenning is like over here. Jervis Inlet's right over top here. And next slide. Yeah.
What's the literage in our bag?
90. That's it. Actually, it's 80. It's 80, yeah. If you pack like a maniac and you get it like Lego, you can get it like dense. It's like you touch it, you're like, doof, like, oh my god, like it's like hard. Like it's good. But you really gotta train the packing. You can't expect to go out there and land and be like, okay, we gotta put it in the bag. It's actually that pack is smaller than most people's packs. You'd see it at like going up the Pemberton in the back.
Just look at the picture of the guy with it on his back.
I'm small. So. Next slide.
How tight do you fold the wing?
Tight as you can get it. Seriously, like it's horrible for the thing. Oh, I think it's beyond a factory. I mean, we're trying to get it to look nice, but I put my harness. So the Bogdan harness is amazing because it's so small. In the Gin Concertina compress bags, I get my wing and the Bogdan harness, and it folds into one sandwich. It folds inside that bag. So the harness and bag are in one Gin Concertina bag. But I wouldn't say it's good for the wing. Probably screwing. What was it? Yeah.
You know, all and everything, but
That's a good point. The Nitinol rods is the way to go. I for these kind of trips, unfortunately Ozone still uses nylon rods, which I think are terrible. I don't know why they do that, and I just cringe when I push that thing in there.
So do you use one bag for both your glider and your paddling gear?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have a dry bag for the boat, because the boat can be a little bit wet depending on your transitions, and that you don't want that to leak inside your bag. So here's another double thing: is the inflation bag for the boat is actually a dry bag that I modified. So when I'm done with the boat, I put it inside the inflation bag, roll it up, and it keeps my kit dry inside. And you also, that's the inflation bag right there. My hiking shoes are in there. My lunch is in there behind my back, because you don't want to open and close these boats all the time. Glider is on the left side of my tube there the whole way. It runs the whole length. And you don't need dry bags inside these boats. It's dry. The first time I did this, I'm like, okay, sorry, you're gonna get wet. And I pulled it out and I was like, what the hell? Like, dry as a bone.
Inside the inflated.
Yeah, all my gear's inside the boat. Yeah, the glider is on this side. So that's the essence of a pack raft, is all the gear is inside the boat. The deck is completely void of.
It has to be symmetrically distributed, the weight.
It doesn't really, no. It's not that fussy.
Just like a little compensate.
It's kind of, yeah, a little bit of weight shift. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. If you're running really hard whitewater, you might feel it might catch an edge on the heavier side, but it's not too particular, no. I have most of the gear I like on the back. I like a light bow, so the bow will come up over waves. So most of it's in the back. Everything goes through that zipper, and you just wing it in. It's like a garage sale. It's actually not too bad.
So I'm not familiar with boats. So all boats you can basically open, put your gear like right in a chamber.
So they're not, no. So there's two styles. One's like a dinghy. That'd be like an inflatable boat that has, you could go like your Walmart edition, or even Alpaca sells them without the T-zip on the back. And then some have the T-zip, which is essential for paragliders. There's no way you could have your gear on the outside. You have too much.
Did you make it? Or?
No, it comes stock like that. Yeah, it has a zipper on the back, about this long. It's a very hefty dry suit zipper. You pull it open, all your gear goes inside. You close the zipper, and then you inflate the boat. So all your gear is inside, minus your inflation bag, which doubles as your dry bag. And you want shoes outside so you can have portage.
So Alpaca made it by design for people to travel. And
Yeah, that's the beauty of these things. Moose hunters use them. You can put a whole moose in a larger version of this. Like these things.
And it still floats.
It's got 400 pounds of storage. You can put 400 pounds. It's crazy.
Put your gun.
My gun I have on the outside of my boat. I have a waterproof bag for it. Yeah, it's a little rifle.
And these hulls are pretty tear resistant?
So they come in two versions. There's a 240D, 210D, and then there's a 420. The 420 is quite a bit heavier. I don't know if it's twice the weight. Pretty close. The volume is huge too. Yeah. I would say if you're interested in paragliding with this under your butt, you want to go for the 210. You definitely don't want to have a skirt, no skirt. You want to have a self-bailing raft. Yeah. You can go in Pemberton. You could launch at Pemby. Instead of landing at the beer farmers, you just go land by the river and you can float home. It's that easy. You don't need to do this shit. It's so. I mean, yeah, you can get a beer and then you can walk the river. You can do that too. But you can start there. It's really accessible. Like it's class 1, and you can fish your way down. So it's yeah. I think we should all do it. I don't know why we're not doing it in Canada.
So this entire boat fits under your rear end, basically, in your heart?
Yeah, the whole boat will fit in a gin compressed 2.7 bag with room. So I can fit my paddles, all the paddles, the dry pants, the dry top, and all the other accessories of the boat inside a gin compressed 2.7 bag for a paraglider. It fits perfectly because you lay the bag out, you lay the boat out. It's almost like it's meant for a boat too. These straps, you're like, no way. And it folds up. it's slippery and it goes right in your butt because you want slippery fabric because there's no way you're getting this fabric. It's gonna bind, and it goes right under your butt, and it's effortless. Yeah.
How do you inflate the boat?
That bag right there is a big inflation bag, and you just sit on it and blow it in, and you top it off with your mouth at the end, and you can get them pretty hard. Like you're poking at it, it's pretty hard. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it.
We're done?
I think so. Hope you learned something.
No, thank you very much.
A little more shoot from the hip than the other one, but
Well, no, I really appreciate you guys making the drive out here. Awesome information. And we have the packing list, right? So we could actually post the packing list. Because I know a lot of people have been asking me about the packing list.
Packing list.
Yeah, what you guys brought with you.
Oh, no way. I can, I don't know if Keith's is that accurate right there.
Not looking for a diagram, it was just more like
Yeah, we could.
fit it all into 80. No.
yeah, we could do something like that. Just an example there, but we could make.
Right.
It's a lot of stuff. It's it's a lot of things, like a little micro things. If we laid them all on the floor, it'd probably be like 300 items. Like there's so much crap. It's so gear intensive. It's annoying. Yeah, but once you get it, you know it. It's like a trick. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just sounds like it's just so much volume. Yeah, I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around this. I bet it is. Well, the Dima tent alone is not cheap. No. You know what I mean? And so fuel. Anyhow, yeah. So I guess we'll sign off. And thank you everyone for coming out. But we will have more information on Corey's trip. And if you want the packing list, we'll get a hold of that. What was in the bag and the leader of the bag and whatnot. And that's it. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Right on. I'll see you in Choco.